did it. Oh, you found it.
Okay. So I'm so pleased to welcome you to our July 2026 edition of the Humanist Canada webinar series. Today, joining us is Kat McLeod, who is an Edmonton-based consumer advocate, public speaker, and dedicated science communicator, widely known within the secular and skeptical communities for her work combating health misinformation and pseudoscience. Driven by a profound personal experience, surviving a near fatal medical crisis after taking an adulterated alternative herbal remedy that secretly contained potent unlisted steroids, Kat has turned a personal trial into a mission of public advocacy. Under her online handle, Kitty Corner Skeptic, she actively works to pull back the curtain on the multi-billion-dollar wellness industry and the dangers of unregulated alternative remedies. And now I will turn it over to Kat. You seem to be muted, Kat.
I apologize. See, the cat touched my stuff. She walked across the keyboard and now everything's a kerfuffle. Thank you for that lovely introduction. That was really, really sweet. I'm just going to share my screen here, so hopefully you can see that. Awesome. So I really appreciate the offer of being able to speak with you all today. This is something that's really passionate and close to my heart. I've been talking about it for a long time now. And no matter how often I tell people my story, it always seems to shock somebody. So, so who the heck am I and why the heck am I talking to you? Well, in addition to my day job working at the University of Alberta, I have spent my entire adult life being a consumer advocate about herbal products primarily. I am also a member of the Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia to ensure that good science is kept online and pseudoscience is marked accordingly. I'm a regular reporter on the Skeptic Zone, which is a podcast based out of Australia. And I've been published a couple of times in Skeptical Inquirer and the Skeptic Australia. And so, how does that tie into humanism? Well, I'm on a crusade of sorts to change society's sick obsession with the term healthy. Health is a luxury that not everyone can attain or maintain. You may never know what somebody else may be dealing with. And by focusing on health and wellness, it makes a large segment of our society feel othered or ostracized. I know that firsthand. I eat a well balanced diet. My Fitbit confirms that I'm active. However, no amount of eating right or being active will ever make me healthy. And that's because I have several chronic illnesses thanks to taking herbal products when I was 20 years old. So while I hate being vulnerable and talking about myself and the mistakes of my youth, I feel it's critically important as a humanist to warn others about the dangers that I learned about firsthand. When I ventured down the alternative path, I was naive, and now I live in a never-ending nightmare. What seemed to be fairly innocent quickly turned into something harmful. I've spoken to countless pharmacy and medical students over the years about my personal experience with which I will share with you. Um, and I like to call, instead of complementary medicine, I like to call it so-called complementary medicine or uncomplimentary medicine. So, scam is what I tend to call it for short because these things can be very dangerous, and I'll get into that with you. so you understand where my caution comes from. While this demotivational poster is funny, it has become one of my life's mottos. I am going to tell you about my experience with herbal products so that you or somebody that you care about may be able to learn from my mistake and not fall the same fate. When I was about 20 years old, I was told by my family doctor that I should start taking steroids for my asthma. And I had seen steroids cut my grandmother's life short, so I wasn't too keen on that. A friend of my mother suggested I go see her herbalist. Her family had been going to him for 10 years. He'd been in business for 25 years. He was the largest herbalist in my city. I went and I was amazed at the things he was able to tell me just by taking my pulse in different places along my wrist, which I now know is scam. Initially, he prescribed me some custom loose herb tea blend that I was supposed to brew and drink several times a day. So I gleefully took this large, stinky bag of loose herbs home, and I was so excited at the possibility of having my asthma under control that I even filmed the process of me brewing it up. And this was pre-TikTok days. So I grabbed my first cup and I took my first sip and I spat it out because it was so vile and so bitter that there was no way I could drink one cup, let alone several cups of this a day. It was a huge waste of time and money. I felt so defeated and so disappointed. I went back to the herbalist and explained what had happened. And he said, "Oh, you can take some capsules instead." Why didn't we start with that? But anyway, undeterred and desperate to get healthy, I handed over more money and thus began my adventure with Asmawan, also known as Trichopact. I read up on what I was taking and how the herbal capsules may interact with other things I was taking. And keep in mind, I was young, and so was the internet. Dr. Google wasn't seeing patients yet. So I was actually using reference books. I thought I was making an informed decision. My one big ignorance was that I didn't know herbs and health foods weren't regulated. I was naive and I assumed everything sold in Canada was regulated. It didn't take long for me to notice a big difference in how I was feeling. The sinus issues I'd battled my entire life and my asthma were virtually gone. I could finally breathe freely. I was working out 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I was gaining a lot of weight, and I'm not talking muscle mass. I started to notice that I had limited mobility in my neck. Cuts and bruises were taking so long to heal. I had trouble concentrating, was emotional, more emotional than most 20-year-old women. And I was getting these strange marks all over my body. I was secretly worried that I had cancer or some awful disease. So I mustered up the courage and I went to my family doctor, but she didn't know what to tell me. She just recommended I stop taking the herbs just to see what would happen. Well, that didn't seem like a good enough reason to me, since the herbs were the one thing that were making my life better. I could breathe, I could work out. So I didn't stop taking the herbs. She sent me for a battery of tests to try and rule some things out, and she referred me to several specialists. This kicked off 5.5 months of seeing a litany of specialists and having different tests administered 2 to 3 times a week, everything from blood work to biopsies. Doctors would never tell me exactly what they were looking for, only what they ruled out once the test results came back. Now, I am not the most patient person in the world, so I started reading medical books to see what might be happening to me. I work at a university, so I had access to really great medical library and awesome books. I figured out that I likely had Cushing's syndrome. And this was confirmed when I was referred to an endocrinologist. I'd been taking the herbs for about 10 months and had gained about 50 kilograms. That's 110 pounds for the American in the room. Doctor said if I hadn't been eating so meticulously well and exercising so much, I likely would have gained twice as much weight. So that was a lot. I no longer recognized myself when I looked in the mirror. I developed this horribly named moon face and buffalo hump. Because, when you're feeling awful, you really need medical terms like that to just, take your self-esteem down another notch. I found myself dressing as if I was a member of a fundamentalist church. I covered myself from elbow to ankle, to hide the damage that had been done to my skin, as it had been breaking apart at the dermal level, leaving scars everywhere. The buffalo hump at the base of my neck was always hidden beneath my long hair. It grew so large that I couldn't tilt my head back to look up at the stars at night or the aurora. I never liked the summer, but now it became my worst nightmare, as I didn't dare wear my hair up or expose any skin to get relief from the heat. I was terrified of what people would think. When I showed the scars to my mother and sister, they asked if they hurt, and I replied, only in here. Mentally and physically, I was a wreck. But why isn't this what every 20-year-old woman dreams of looking like? Ah. But now that we knew I had Cushing's, I had hope that they could fix me. But they weren't sure why I had developed it, since it's normally caused by a tumor on your pituitary or adrenal glands, which I didn't have. So they didn't know how to treat me. One day, over lunch, my endocrinologist was talking with a pediatric specialist about their unique cases. I call myself a freak. I own that. He doesn't like that, but we're unique. That's all. Um, the pediatrics specialist had three patients with very odd symptoms, but none were the same as each other. However, I had the symptoms from all three patients. I was the key. It was then that we found out that we were all taking asthma 1. So, after lunch, the endocrinologist called me up and asked if I had any herbs that he could maybe test. And since I worked right across the street, benefits of working at a university, I ran some over in my coffee break. They tested the herbs and they found out that asthma 1 had a hidden ingredient not listed on the packaging that I had diligently looked over. It was cow gallstones, and they were acting like a corticosteroid 12 times more potent than prednisone. I was taking 9 capsules a day, or the equivalent of 108 prednisone a day. The children were taking a lower dose, which is why they weren't presenting all of the symptoms that I was. Had I stopped taking cold turkey, like my GP suggested, I would have died, and they probably never would have known why. Heck, I nearly died just when they were trying to wean me off the herbs. That was just one of several brushes with death that I've survived. So once I knew what was making me sick, I faxed the herbalist to tell him it was his products that were to blame. I know, faxing. I'm dating myself. It's okay. The herbalist had seen me get sicker, and he kept recommending different herbs to help with all the symptoms that I'd developed. And I kept throwing money at him, hoping something would help me. I thought he would want to know that it was his products that were to blame. But he didn't do anything. He kept selling Asmawan, even knowing it was harmful, even knowing he was probably harming children. He didn't care. As a side note, he had an intern that was working with him who also happened to read my facts. There were good things about the pre-email days. And the intern was taking loose herbs for the eczema he had on his hands, or eczema for the Americans. Sorry. He decided to ask a grad student friend of his to test the herbs that he was taking. The test results showed that the loose herbs were coated with 3 times the legal amount of DDT permitted in China. And DDT is a known carcinogen that has been outlawed in Canada for my entire lifetime. It turns out that the intern didn't have eczema. Handling the loose herbs all day was actually eating away at the flesh on his hands. So he stopped working there and went into iridology, which is another scam. I was livid. My red-headed temper just flared. I spoke with a lawyer who told me I couldn't sue the herbalist. I could only sue the federal government because there weren't any regulations in place for herbal products. At the time, I was told I likely wouldn't live very long, not long enough to see the court case come to fruition. To which I replied to the doctors that I would live to be 80 and dancing on their graves. I've always been a little bit spicy. So I became vocal. I wanted to warn everyone. So I spoke to pharmacists, healthcare providers, coworkers, anyone who would listen, and I'm still doing that to this day. I got my story out there. I was in the Edmonton Journal twice back when printed newspapers were a popular thing. And through it all, I never came across the parents of any of those 3 children. I don't know if they were siblings or if it was 3 different families. I would have thought that they would be as incensed as I was and they would speak out. But perhaps the guilt and shame was too much for them to be willing to be vocal. Because it can be incredibly difficult to admit that you made a mistake, especially one that has such negative consequences. Shame and embarrassment can be crippling. I assume that since the children were on lower doses of Asthma-1, that they were able to be weaned off successfully without any lasting side effects. That's my hope. And that's what happened to my sister, who was also taking a lower dose of Asthma-1. So I know it's possible that they may be okay, and I hope they are. I became a guest speaker for 3rd and 4th year pharmacy students at the University of Alberta. And an inspector from Health Canada would also speak to the students, and the stories she told were terrifying. She spoke about inspecting manufacturing plants and seeing mouse droppings or broken glass being mixed in with the products that were being made. There were no safety or cleanliness standards that were being adhered to, and there are still too few inspectors to do regular site inspections. The inspector's name was Elaine, and she once told me about a couple who wanted to sell ground alfalfa as a herbal supplement, but they wanted to be sure they were doing the right things. Good on them. They wanted to be safe and they wanted to do things properly. So she told them to send her a sample of the alfalfa, and she sent it off to her lab in Vancouver for testing. Now, normally the results would be sent to her in the mail, but this time the lab actually phoned her and asked where she got the sample from because it was the most toxic contamination that the lab had ever seen. When she went back to the couple to find out where they'd sourced the alfalfa from, they told her that they were picking it from the side of the highway near their home. So it was covered in pesticides and pollution, and they were going to grind this up and sell it as a supplement. So I developed a friendship with Elaine, and we would keep each other in the loop about what we were doing and see if there was any way that we could help each other out. So instead of suing the federal government, I ended up volunteering my time as part of a stakeholder group that worked with Health Canada to have natural health product regulations created. I felt this was the only thing I could do to ensure that other people wouldn't experience what I had. The regulations came into force on January 1st, 2004. While the natural health product regulations are not perfect, they are a good starting point, and they help to ensure good manufacturing processes, proper labeling, and that manufacturers can be held accountable for what they're selling. Also, product recalls can happen. Items can be banned for sale, and manufacturers can be held accountable when necessary. Eventually, my endocrinologist told me that my adrenal glands were permanently damaged. My adrenal function never returned. So, as a result, for instance, I can't drive because I don't produce adrenaline. Just really weird. Freaks a lot of people out, sorry. But because I don't have adrenaline, it would be the equivalent of driving drunk. So I just don't get behind the wheel. And that really affects your life. Physically and mentally, I was destroyed. My self esteem was non existent. I developed an eating disorder, or two. Who's counting, really? Don't judge. I've subsequently accumulated a long list of health issues that as a result from taking herbs. A mistake I made when I was really just still a kid. And sadly, if you want, you can still buy Asthma on the internet. I do not recommend it. So, why should you care about my story and why I became a consumer protection advocate? Well, because this could just as easily happen to you or somebody you love. This is a marketplace built on deception. About 20 years ago, it was estimated that 4 billion people regularly use natural health products, which was over 65% of the population at the time. According to the Health Canada website, as of 2016, which is sadly the latest data I can get, 71% of Canadians use vitamins, minerals, or herbal products and or homeopathy, which they're all the same category now. They're all natural health products. I'd like you to note that prior to 2004, vitamins and minerals supplements had to meet the same standards as drugs. They had to apply for a drug identification number, or a DIN. Now, those regulations are relaxed, and they only have to meet the standards for natural health product licenses and get an NPN, which is a natural product number. As of last year, there are 80,000 natural health products licensed for sale in Canada. Between 80 and 90% of the NHPs available worldwide are bred in Asia, and 60 to 80% of those are from China. And in places there, they still have things like DDT. The efficacy is questionable at best, and the safety of most herbal products is compromised by the lack of suitable quality controls, inadequate labeling, and the absence of appropriate patient information, including warnings about potential interactions. Even though natural health products have some regulations in Canada, they don't go far enough, in my opinion. And in America, they don't have any. Manufacturers are still only required to self-attest to the efficacy of their products. And until recently, it wasn't mandatory to report adverse reactions, which can include death. In July of 2023, Vanessa's Law came into effect and under fire from the alt-med crowd. Vanessa's Law mandated that healthcare providers report any adverse reactions from natural health products, just as they would for any other medication or drug reactions. But the alt-med crowd said the government's taking your choices away, which it wasn't doing, but misinformation is out there. Since 2018, consumers in Canada have had the ability to report adverse reactions themselves online. However, many people aren't aware that this is available to them. More so, a lot of people don't realize it was a natural health product that caused the adverse reaction. I didn't when it happened to me. And, for shameless plug, if you want to learn more about Vanessa's Law, you can listen to the episode of the Body of Evidence podcast featuring me and Timothy Caulfield, which is on the slide. It's quite interesting. They talked to the father of Vanessa, named for Vanessa's Law. In 2021, the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development Office completed an audit of Health Canada's natural health product program and found both strengths and areas for improvement. The conclusion was overall, Health Canada's oversight of the natural health products available for sale in Canada fell short of ensuring that products were safe and effective. And that is alarming. Two key findings of the audit were that Health Canada did not verify that facilities followed good manufacturing practices before products arrived on the market, and Health Canada left health products unchecked after they entered the market and was not always successful in responding to serious problems, including one adverse reaction that involved hospitalization, where Health Canada was unsuccessful in having a natural health product which contained pharmaceutical ingredients removed from the market. So this product had like black market prescription drugs in it, and Health Canada couldn't get it off the market. That's terrifying. Health Canada accepted all the audit recommendations and committed to addressing them. But I think most importantly, the audit emphasized the need for the consumer still to beware, even though the regulations have been in place for over 20 years. Things aren't safe. I love this quote from Tim Minchin. Quote, alternative medicine, by definition, has either not been proven to work or been proven not to work. Do you know what they call alternative medicine that has been proven to work? Medicine. End quote. I was skeptical, cautious, and I spent hundreds of dollars a month on herbal products that nearly cost me my life and destroyed my health permanently. I bought into the ancient fallacy that because traditional Chinese herbal remedies have been used for centuries, they should be safe and effective, as well as the appeal to nature fallacy that natural things are healthier. But, to quote my sister, snake bites and arsenic are all natural too, and I don't recommend them. Not only are most natural health products a waste of money and potentially harmful on their own, like medication, herbal products can interact with each other and with medicines. We're going to flash back to the 1990s. Kava Kava became popular in the 1990s as an attractive recreational drug, reaching its peak popularity in 1998. Kava supposedly helped with stress and anxiety. There were Kava Kava juice bars popping up. We even had one on the University of Alberta campus. But shortly thereafter, they vanished. Why? Well, kava was causing liver damage. And when mixed with alcohol, acetaminophen, or some prescription medications, which is never found on a university campus, um, it was causing some people to become excessively drowsy. Some even became comatose, and at least one died. When mixed with opioids, kava can lead to serious side effects such as respiratory distress, coma, or death. Even taking normal doses for a short time has resulted in liver failure and at least one death. While you may be thinking that the 90s were so long ago, kava is still legal and sold to this day. In fact, in America, there is a popular drink called Feel Free that mixes kava, which is a relaxant, and kratom, which is a stimulant. It can be highly addictive and has opioid-like effects. Every cold and flu season, you hear about echinacea. Manufacturers can say something has echinacea in it, but what part of the plant is being used? Is it the petals, the leaves, the stem, the root? Was it a mature plant? What time of day was it harvested? If it's picked early in the morning or late in the evening, it could have dew on it, which could make the plant moldy. And if it's not mature, it won't have any medicinal effects. While there have been a couple of studies with very small sample sizes that have shown very weak evidence for the prevention of colds when echinacea is taken daily for a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks, there's no scientific studies which prove that there are immune boosting benefits to help cure a cold. You're simply paying for a placebo. Research done at the Mayo Clinic has shown many supplements affect the enzyme systems that regulate how drugs move through the body, how they're absorbed, distributed, and eliminated. When these enzyme systems are disrupted, medications can either become dangerously ineffective or toxic because they accelerate the breakdown of medications, making them ineffective, or they alter how the drugs are absorbed and distributed through the body, which can change how quickly medications are eliminated. And that can create unpredictable and dangerous drug levels in the blood by slowing down how a drug is metabolized. St. John's wort is a popular supplement used to treat depression, anxiety, and symptoms of menopause. It interacts with many pharmaceuticals, including migraine medications, antibiotics, antidepressants, birth control, no surprise, babies, blood thinners, certain pain medications like Tylenol. In fact, St. John's wort is the supplement that has the most documented interactions with prescription drugs. There are 595 drugs known to interact with St. John's wort across 20 different drug classifications. It's shocking. It can also interact with vitamins, herbs, and other supplements. Golden seal is often combined with echinacea to help prevent or fight colds, supposedly. But it's also used to treat conjunctivitis, lower blood pressure, hay fever, and gastro issues. It seems like a one herb fits all kind of deal. However, it can also change how quickly the liver breaks down some medications, and in some instances may increase the effects or side effects of that medication. The herbal Ozempic is has berberine as the main ingredient, and that's a plant alkaloid that can be extracted from golden seal. Berberine is virtually insoluble in water and has very low intestinal absorption, which means the supplements are useless. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't risks or possible side effects by taking the useless supplements. Berberine has been known to cause gastrointestinal issues and may increase medication levels in your body by inhibiting liver enzymes. It commonly interacts with drugs for diabetes, high blood pressure, and cholesterol, which people may be taking if they're also looking to lose weight. Most people have heard of ginkgo biloba and ginseng. Ginkgo is used to treat a wide range of ailments, including heart disease, dementia, mental difficulties, and sexual dysfunction. Yet, studies have not proven it effective for any of these conditions or ailments. It interacts with nearly 300 medications, including anticoagulants and antiplatelet drugs, such as warfarin, heparin, and ibuprofen. It can increase your risk of bleeding. It may decrease the effectiveness or cause adverse effects with antidepressants, anticonvulsants, which are seizure drugs. It can actually increase your risk of seizures, and it can alter the body's response to diabetes medications, reducing the effectiveness of certain statins, as well as interacting with some herbs. Studies have shown carcinogenic effects on the thyroid and the liver. Fun stuff, huh? You don't read about that when they talk about ginkgo. You just think ginkgo biloba is a fun word to say. Ginseng is purported to boost immunity. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Brain function and energy levels. Oh, gimme. There are over 100 prescription medications that interact with ginseng, including blood thinners and, again, medications used for type 2 diabetes, antidepressants, immunosuppressants, and some cancer treatments. You don't want to mess with that. There are several side effects, but you won't ever see any of them listed on the packaging. Even though it may cause birth defects if taken during pregnancy or have negative effects on infants if taken while breastfeeding. Green tea and green tea extract, which also includes matcha, it's all the same plant, claims to improve cardiovascular health, enhance cognitive function, promote weight loss, regulate blood sugar levels, support digestive health, and protect against certain types of cancer. Sounds great! But green tea and green tea extract can interact with various medications, reducing the effectiveness and increasing side effects. Due to the high vitamin K content for matcha, as well as caffeine and the active catechin compounds for all three. They may cause stomach issues, headaches, and sleep issues. It hinders calcium and iron absorption, so it can cause anemia or iron deficiency, especially in women who are already prone to that. Oh, and it's linked to liver disease. Fun times. Let's look at some adverse reactions that actually were reported in the news. Lori McClintock, the wife of Northern California Congressman Tom McClintock, consumed the herbal remedy white mulberry leaf shortly before her death on December 15th, 2021. According to a Sacramento County coroner report, McClintock died from dehydration due to gastroenteritis caused by adverse effects of white mulberry leaf. She was found with a partially intact white mulberry leaf in her stomach, and it's unclear whether she took it as a supplement or if she ate fresh or dried leaves or if she drank them in a tea. But they can tell from the autopsy report that they were to blame. She had complained about an upset stomach while decorating her house for the holidays the day before. In the wake of Roe versus Wade being overturned a few years ago, people, especially on social media like TikTok, are looking to induce herbal abortions by consuming mugwort or pennyroyal, both of which can cause liver failure, seizures, and even death. On March 29th, 2024, I read about herbal supplements in Japan that had been recalled after 5 people who had taken them had died, and more than 100 ended up in the hospital. The pills, manufactured by Osaka-based Kobayashi Pharmaceutical Company, were taken off the shelves as a health scare began to grow in magnitude. Initially, the company officials confirmed 114 people had been hospitalized. All had taken products containing an ingredient named benakoji, which is a species of red mold. Traditionally, benakoji has been used to make Chinese sake and Okinawan fermented tofu. But more recent years, it has been taken as a herbal supplement for statin drugs. When it's made properly, yeast grown on rice produces various compounds, including lovastatin, which is known to lower cholesterol. But if something goes wrong in the production, instead you get citrulline, a chemical linked to kidney, liver, and cell toxicity. While many believed citrulline may have been the cause of the illnesses, investigations have shown pularic acid and 2 compounds with similar structures to lovastatin to be in the affected batches. Since lovastatin is classified as a drug, it's a statin, often manufacturers leave that off the label because they would know it would need higher regulatory scrutiny. Many people use the herbal product because it's cheaper than the prescription statin drugs. The batches were manufactured between June and August 2023. And while the company learned that there were issues in December 2023, the public wasn't informed and a recall wasn't issued until late March of 2024. The company knew that the product had been exported to China and Taiwan, but no one knows if it was for use in those countries or if it was resold to other countries. Since this story first broke, the company has reported 279 deaths, with another 80 deaths still under investigation, and between 500 and 94,000 non-fatal injuries or medical consultations in Japan alone. In January of 2025, a report by the Clean Label Project was published which revealed nearly half of the protein powders in the US market exceeded the safety limits for toxic metals like lead, cadmium, arsenic, and mercury. Then, in October, a study was done by Consumer Reports, and it found two-thirds of tested powders potentially had unsafe levels of lead. Let's dig deeper, because people use these powders hoping to improve their health. They want to lose weight, maybe. They want to gain muscle. In the Clean Label study, 83% of the products in the US were tested, and 47% of those exceeded the safety thresholds. Plant-based powders had higher levels of metal than whey powders. Chocolate-flavored powders? Well, we all love our chocolate. And these had the highest levels of heavy metals, 4 times more than vanilla. And organic powders had, on average, 3 times the lead and double the cadmium, not a good marketing line, than the whey products. The Consumer Report 2025 study found over two-thirds of the powders they tested had potentially unsafe levels of lead. But findings like these don't often make the news because they aren't exciting to talk about. I'm sure I've just bummed you all out. I'm sorry. This is another meme that describes me and a cartoon because we really need to lighten the mood a touch after all of that negativeness. I'd like to share a Carl Sagan quote from his 1995 book, The Demon Haunted World. If you're not familiar with Carl Sagan, he's a hero. He said, quote, "Pseudoscience speaks to the powerful emotional needs that science often leaves unfulfilled. It caters to fantasies about personal powers we lack and long for, like those attributed to comic book superheroes today and earlier to gods. In some of its manifestations, it offers satisfaction of spiritual hungers, cures for disease, promises that death is not the end." End quote. So you can see why woo would be enticing, especially to vulnerable people. Even after my horrible herbal experience, after a lot of gaslighting by doctors, I have lost trust in most healthcare practitioners. And while I wasn't tempted to try alternative treatments again, I can completely understand why people are drawn in by it. You want to empower yourself. You want to take control over things, especially when you're not feeling great and doctors don't seem to be able to help you. So, now armed with all this information, what should you do? Well, whenever I tell my story, whether it's to students on Skeptic Zone or other podcasts, I always hear from people who are now reflecting and wondering if that's what happened to their loved ones who had an unexplained illness or died mysteriously. Often people ask me how they can talk to somebody to steer them away from alternative treatments. And the best advice I have is to stay skeptical, be aware of pseudoscience, Educate yourself and your loved ones about potential dangers and how to seek science-based evidence for claims. We are all so busy and exhausted these days that we don't want to have to read every label when we're shopping, especially when you're not feeling well. But you can watch for buzzwords and phrases in advertising and on labels. When I was a young kid, my mom bought us a buzzword bingo game that we would play while we were watching TV. This is for the commercial breaks, before PVRs. Yeah, I'm old. It helped us identify gimmicks in advertising, and we became more educated consumers by asking questions like, how can something be both new and improved? So I made up this bingo card, and you are free to take a screenshot of it if you would like to play along, or if you want to use it as a tool to maybe have a discussion with somebody in your life who maybe has seen some of these words on some of their products. Let's quickly go over a couple of my favorite marketing myths. Claims that something can boost, improve, or strengthen your immune system. How would they prove that? How can this claim be tested? Where are the peer-reviewed double-blind studies? There aren't any. I'd like to read you an excerpt from an article published in the Harvard Medical Journal from February 2021 because it says it better than I can. Quote, "The idea of boosting your immunity is enticing, but the ability to do so has proved elusive for several reasons. The immune system is precisely that, a system, not a single entity. To function well, it requires balance and harmony. There is still much that researchers don't know about the intricacies and interconnectedness of the immune response. For now, there are no scientifically proven direct links between lifestyle and enhanced immune function. Many products on store shelves claim to boost or support immunity, but the concept of boosting immunity actually makes little sense scientifically. In fact, boosting the number of cells in your body, immune cells or other, is not necessarily a good thing. Attempting to boost the cells of your immune system is especially complicated because there are so many different kinds of cells in the immune system that respond to so many different microbes in so many ways. Which cells should you boost? And to what number? So far, scientists do not know the answer. What is known is that the body is continually generating immune cells. No one knows how many cells or what the best mix of cells in the immune system needs to function at its optimum level. Walk into a store and you'll find bottles of pills and herbal preparations that claim to support immunity or otherwise boost the health of your immune system. Although some preparations have been found to alter some components of immune function, thus far there is no evidence that they actually bolster immunity to the point where you are better protected against infection and disease. Demonstrating whether a herb, or any substance for that matter, can enhance immunity is, as yet, a highly complicated matter. Scientists don't know, for example, whether a herb that seems to raise the level of antibodies in the blood is actually doing anything beneficial for overall immunity. End quote. So from now on, anytime you see that claim, you know it's bogus. If you slap the word natural on a product, it is more likely to sell, even though it's meaningless. When a product claims to be natural, it often triggers a positive response in consumers. It implies that it's desirable, morally acceptable, or inherently good. This reason is known as the appeal to nature fallacy. The intention behind using the label natural is to make you feel good about your purchase and influence your buying decisions. The belief that natural equals healthier or safer has become widespread. However, The term natural doesn't provide any information about a product's healthfulness or safety. Instead, chemicals are often vilified. However, everything on this planet is made up from various chemicals, even you and me. And for instance, natural E. coli bacteria occasionally enters the food supply and can be deadly. Where on the flip side, synthetic, unnatural, man made folic acid is used in fortified foods and it prevents serious health consequences for unborn children. Detoxes are bogus. If you see something purporting to detoxify your body, it's garbage. Don't believe it. Your liver and kidneys detoxify your body. And if they can't, you need a medical intervention, not a funky smoothie or a crash diet. Detoxes, excuse me, and detox diets and cleanses have gained popularity as the wellness industry grows, but their effectiveness remains controversial and they're not proven to be safe. Manufacturers use the words may or helps or the phrase traditionally used for as a way to avoid making an outright medical claim that would require evidence. They say may help with or help support as opposed to proven to benefit. Some manufacturers also deliberately won't disclose certain ingredients because they will need to meet a higher standard of regulation, like I mentioned earlier with lovastatin. Others will deliberately deceive in the product write-up on their website, like this example in the bottom right-hand corner there, where they're trying to say that because they were granted a natural health product number by Health Canada, that somehow this was tested and approved by Health Canada and it met certain standards of evidence by using the word proven. Which, yeah, no. Look for claims that seem to be too good to be true or are vague. If there are no side effects or risks mentioned on the package, then chances are that no clinical trials have ever been done, or that the product, like with homeopathy, is completely useless because any active treatment has the possibility of harm, side effects, or an adverse reaction. That's why you get those little pamphlets when you go to buy an aspirin. Look for poor translations. Some of the ones I've included here are quite hilarious. Or spelling errors on product packages or websites. I don't think I want to consume something that's meant to release the flesh and discharge the heat. The term digestive disturbances makes me envision the chestbuster from Aliens. And be sure to always tell your healthcare providers what you're taking. Be an educated consumer. I've included a couple of links down there that are really useful resources if you want them. So,
Kat, sorry. Sorry to
yes,
interrupt. I just really would love to leave some time for people to ask some questions.
no worries. This
I
is
don't
my
know.
second to last slide.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm wrapping things up. So, this is why I'd like to change society's sick obsession with the term healthy. I will never be healthy again, and I fear that too many people are being hurt by the bombardment from the wellness trend. This quote from Andy Warhol, where he equates health with wealth, seems to sum up how most of our society feels. That so many people have so many problems. When you think that health is wealth, you're just so grateful to be normal, more or less, aren't you? But I don't, I agree with, yes, your health is worth a lot. However, I don't think that I should feel less than because I don't have my health anymore. So we have to turn away from the focus on health and focus instead on balance. Because our society seems to believe that our health is a given and that if you're unhealthy, that it's somehow your fault. Society celebrates when expectant parents say that they don't care about their baby's gender as long as it's healthy. But what if it's born with an ailment? Are they going to send it back? What do those parents do if they have an unhealthy baby? Where's their support system suddenly gone? It's not fair and it's not right. They have enough on their plates coping with a sick infant. They're losing the excitement, all the hopes they had for their baby. But nobody goes from the cradle to the grave healthy. We all experience illness at some point. Society's obsession with healthy devalues people with chronic illnesses and disabilities. And if a person isn't in perfect health, it's okay because we're all going to be there someday. When my herbal hell began, I was told I'd never be able to work and that I would likely be dead before I was 30. Yet, I never stopped working, and spoiler alert, I'm over 30. It would have been easy to curl up and let myself die. I came close enough times. But it took determination and stubbornness to overcome everything that tried to destroy me. And it's often been a very lonely journey. Using our bodies and our health status to determine our value to society is a form of control. The shame and stigma of ill health or even perceived ill health can be harmful to mental health, and it's a multi-billion-dollar market. Fearing judgment, feeling isolated, othered, or ostracized, being gaslit by healthcare professionals can all drive people to look for quick fixes or cures that often lead them down the path of pseudoscience. Society should be promoting self acceptance and leading a fulfilling, well balanced life instead of obsessing over something that's fleeting. Beauty fades, health deteriorates, but we are all worthy of acceptance. So don't fall victim to it. Be kind to yourself and to others and think critically. Please learn from my mistake. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you so much, Kat, for a wonderful, interesting presentation. I am going to just turn off the recording now.